The wind that scoured the red foothills of the Red Mountains carried the salt-sharp tang of the sea and the faint sweetness of blooming ghost grass. Eddard Stark had never felt such a wind in the cold north, but he would remember this wind for the rest of his days. For it was the first breath of a day that should have ended in mourning and instead birthed a miracle that altered the arc of kingdoms. He reined in at the foot of the Tower of Joy, its pale stones streaked pink in dawn light, and for a heartbeat he thought it beautiful. Then his brother's whispered screams returned to him and beauty curdled to ash. Around him, in a loose crescent, stood Howland Reed, Theo Wool, Ethan Glover, Martin Castle. Their mail rang with every breath, as though the tower itself trembled. They had come for death. 7 against 3, they expected only sorrow. Arthur Dane waited above, sword dawn-bright in the crenellations. Oswell went and Gerald Hightower flanked him in muted steel. Kingsguard white cloaks snapped like banners in that wind. Under normal sun, Ned might have paused to honor them, for they were legends. But on this dawn, they were merely the last doors closing between him and his sister. When the swords were done singing, when dawn lay broken and Went's shield lay cloven and Gerald Hightower's famed strength seeped out upon the dust, Ned found his legs moving of their own accord. He left the moaning of wounded men to his friends, climbed the narrow spiral stair, and burst into the solar he had visited only in nightmares. The smell struck him first, copper and fear, overlaid by the bruised perfume of crushed violets. He followed the scent through another door and into a chamber lit by a single high arrow slit. And there she was. Lyanna lay upon a bed of blood-soaked linen, her black hair plastered to her brow, her cheeks flushed with fever. Yet her eyes were open, wide, gray, fierce. And though her voice was scarcely more than a croak, it was living sound. "Ned?" she rasped, lifting a trembling hand. He stumbled forward and caught her fingers, damp and hot. At the base of the bed, a wool-wrapped bundle squirmed, and a frail cry lifted over the roaring tide in his ears. A child, no, her child. He saw the hair first, a wisp of dark soot against pale skin. Lyanna's hand tightened. "Promise me," she whispered, but this was no death rattle. There was iron in it, iron and something Ned would only later name as purpose. "Promise me you will guard him, guard the truth, but not forever." She coughed, spat pink, fought for breath. "When the time is right, the realm must know. For his sake, for mine." Tears blurred his sight. "You will tell them yourself, Lya. You'll live to see his first steps. I swear it." She tried to smile, and the effort seemed to cost her another coin of life. Yet, after a moment, her breathing steadied. The fever raged, but it did not consume her. A midwife Ned had never met knelt nearby, fingers stained. "Milk of the poppy kept her from the stranger," the woman said. "She lost much blood, but the bleeding has slowed. Keep her warm, water her by the hour, and she may yet walk from this bed." Ned had faced knights in tourney and monsters in war, but he had never felt such trembling relief. He bent, placed his brow upon Lyanna's and laughed, though tears leaked into her hair. "The gods are not all cruel." Lyanna's lips brushed his ear. "Not cruel, just fond of stories." Her eyes drifted to the swaddled child. "This one, how a story ends depends upon who claims the telling." 3 weeks later, the North welcomed its daughter home. The gray keep of Winterfell had seen banners fly for grief enough. Now it bristled with color for hope. Lyanna was carried through the gate in a litter, and she despised every heartbeat of it. "I would ride," she insisted when Robb, a round-faced toddler, toddled up to stare at the infant swaddled in her arms. But Maester Luwin's orders were law, and Ned's near-weeping gratitude was harder than steel. So she endured the litter, smiling at every cheer, acknowledging every raised horn. At the welcoming feast, the great hall roared, but Lyanna listened for any mention of Rhaegar, of Robert, of the war that still smoldered in unsettled corners of the realm. The silence on those matters was louder than the music. They do not speak of ghosts when the living sit so near, she thought, but ghosts ruled them nonetheless. Ned approached her after the singers finished a northern dirge. His face bore the wear of a campaign that had gone from righteous to ruinous and back to righteous again. "News from the south," he murmured, offering her a slip of parchment. "Lord John Arryn writes that Robert still expects to marry the Lady Lyanna by year's end. He knows nothing of the child. He believes Rhaegar stole and raped you, left you to die, and that vengeance has been served." Lyanna's fingers crushed the parchment before she forced them open. "And does Robert intend to punish the Targaryen babe who draws breath this very hour?" Ned said nothing, but his gray eyes spoke. Robert Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, King of the Seven Kingdoms, Slayer of the Usurper Dragon, whatever stylings the South sang, was still the boy who had laughed too loud in Winterfell's yard, the youth who had sworn to put a crown of pale blue roses upon her head. Yet that boy was gone, slaked in blood on the trident. In his place stood a man who had killed a prince, shattered a dynasty, and covered his grief in wine. There would be no place for a Targaryen child in such a man's court, nor, perhaps, for a wife who bore another man's son. Lyanna rose from the bench, ignoring how her knees threatened to fold. "Then the truth must ride before rumor," she said, "before Robert can impose it upon us." In the domed rookery, Ned watched her dictate a letter to Jon Arryn. Her voice, still soft from the long fever, carried a flint-hard cadence. She told the Lord of the Eyrie that Rhaegar had annulled his first marriage and wed her in secret under the weirwood of Winterfell's Godswood. She named the witnesses, 2 Kingsguard, the High Septon who had died on Dragonstone, and Howland Reed, now sworn to silence. She acknowledged the child as Aegon Stark Targaryen, rightful heir of Rhaegar and legitimate prince of Dragonstone. She made no threats, offered no pleas. She simply stated the truth, signed with a Stark direwolf above a crowned dragon, and sealed the parchment with ice-blue wax. "Are you certain?" Ned asked when the rook flapped out into the dawn. "Robert loves you still." Lyanna touched the fading bruise on her left wrist, the mark of a midwife's binding strap. "He loves a ghost of me, Ned. The girl who danced in the rain at Harrenhal is dead. I have buried her with the other ghosts." Her gaze settled on the courtyard below, where Robb chased Rickon's wolf pup in dizzy circles. "If Robert is the man the realm needs, let him prove it. If he is only the man I once knew, he will prove that too." The Raven reached King's Landing in 5 days, but word of its message did not return to Winterfell for a fortnight. It came not by bird but by man. Jon Arryn himself, weary from the road yet dressed in the blue and white of House Arryn. Behind him rode Ser Barristan Selmy, and that alone told Lyanna a great deal. Honor had spurred the hand to come. Fear had spurred the Kingsguard. They met in the solar above Winterfell's great hall, away from servant ears. Jon Arryn bowed to Lyanna, his courtesy impeccable, but his lined face bore the strain of a man attempting to mend a ship's keel in a storm. "Your Grace," he began, and that subtle address, instead of "my lady," sent Ned's heart into his throat. "His Majesty King Robert Baratheon bids you journey south at once, under the protection of the Kingsguard, to sit beside him on the Iron Throne as his queen." Lyanna's brow arched. "His queen? After he annuls my lawful marriage? After he names my son a bastard?" Jon Arryn did not flinch, but his silence confessed enough. Ser Barristan cleared his throat. "His Majesty believes the marriage was forced." The knight's pale eyes flickered. "He believes Prince Rhaegar abducted and dishonored you. If you swear it so, your son may yet be acknowledged, though perhaps not as heir." Lyanna laughed, a raw, startling sound that made Ned step closer as if to shield her. "And if I do not swear? If I speak the truth? Then," Jon Arryn said softly, "Robert will see treason where we see tragedy. The realm is weary of blood. Another war so soon. The realm is weary of lies." Lyanna cut in. "Targaryen lies slew Brandon, slew my father, slew children in their cradles. Now Baratheon lies would slay my son. I will not trade one tyranny for another." Ned placed a hand on her shoulder. "Lya, think. There may be another path." "There is only ever the path we blaze," she replied, eyes bright as moonlit ice. She addressed Jon Arryn again. Tell Robert that Lyanna Stark of Winterfell will not be queen of ashes and falsehood. Tell him the lawful crown lies with my son, and if Robert wishes it upon his own brow, he may bend the knee to Aegon, as my brother Brandon would have bent had he lived. Tell him the North remembers. Ser Barristan exhaled slowly, as if fogging up a visor before battle. Jon Arryn's shoulders sagged. You leave him no gentle choice. Choice is seldom gentle, Lyanna said, but it is choice that proves a king's worth. Let him choose. They chose war without speaking its name. Robert's reply came not by raven but by decree. Storm Lords were commanded to gather at King's Landing. Lord Mace Tyrell was invited to the city to celebrate the new king's imminent betrothal, presumably to some fresh flower of the Reach. And an order went forth that the child rumored at Winterfell be brought south for royal fostering. Under the watchful eye of Queen Regent Lyanna Stark, the parchment burned. The wax bore Baratheon stag and seven-pointed star of the faith. Ned crushed it in his fist, jaw clenched hard enough to crack a tooth. He calls it fostering, he rasped. I call it hostage-taking. Lyanna held her son as if steel braced her spine. The stag was wounded on the trident. He bleeds still, and the smell of it draws him to darker hunts. Howland Reed has already sent word that the next stands ready, Maester Luwin reported. Lord Wyman Manderley has recalled his fleet from White Harbor. Lyanna turned toward the Maester's quills and scrolls. Send this to Lord Arryn. The North offers parley at Riverrun in 1 month's time. Let Robert come with 100 men, unarmored. I will meet him with the same. If he refuses, the North will close its gates, and the Baratheon will learn winter's teeth.
Ned swallowed.
And if he comes? Lyanna looked down at the child in her arms. For a moment her resolve softened into mother's wonder. Then perhaps ghosts may speak peace, and living men will listen. Riverrun's riverine fields sprawled lush under a forgiving sun when Lyanna Stark rode into the godswood beyond the castle walls. She wore a mail shirt beneath a gown of ice gray, the direwolf sigil broidered in white silk across her breast. Aegon, named Jon among the small folk for safety, remained north with Ned's Lady Catelyn, under the watch of every sworn sword Winterfell could spare. Yet Lyanna felt him near, a second heartbeat steadying her own. Robert waited beneath an ancient weirwood whose face wept sap like blood. The sight of him jolted her. Broader than memory, beard flecked with silver, eyes red-rimmed. He wore no crown, only a plain leather jerkin and hunting breeches, as if nostalgia might undo truth. When she dismounted, he strode forward and seized her hands, calluses scratching her knuckles. "Lya," he breathed, and for a heartbeat the smell of ale and sweat was drowned by the remembered scent of rain-drenched roses. But only for a heartbeat. She withdrew her hands. "Your Grace." Pain flashed across his face, quickly quenched by anger. "Grace? Is that all we were to wed? I would have built you a palace of song, and crowned me with a lie." She folded her arms. "I have come so you might hear the truth from my own lips. I wed Rhaegar willingly, before gods and men. Our son lives. His claim precedes yours." Robert's breath left him like a struck bell. "He raped you, Lyanna. He murdered you in all but name. Say it and I'll pardon the child. Send him to Old Town as maester or to the wall. On your word." Her laughter rang brittle. "I know what your word is worth to babes." He flinched as if from a thrown spear. The Mad King's grandchildren were burned for crimes they did not commit, and still you howl for vengeance, masquerading as justice. She stepped closer, voice low. "I loved you once, but love is no cloak for murder. Bend the knee to Aegon, Robert, and rule beside him as protector. The realm will follow if you lead." Silence pooled between them. A thrush called, "Oblivious." Finally Robert's eyes hardened into blue ice. "I will not bend, not to a dead dragon's whelp. I won the throne with my hammer. The realm accepted my victory. The Seven bless it." Lyanna's shoulders eased, as though she had set down a weight. "Then you leave me one road." He shook his head, despairing. "I would have given you everything. You would have given me a grave. She turned to mount, but his hand clamped around her wrist. Stay, he pleaded, voice a rasp. Come back with me. We can make the bards liars. The child, he can be ours. In that grip, Lyanna felt the strength that had shattered Rhaegar's breastplate, the will that had pushed armies across rivers. She might have yielded once, for Robert of the Yard, for the boy whose laugh made her feel like summer. But that boy dwelt in tombs now. She met Robert's gaze with storm-gray steadiness. I am no man's possession, and this realm is no Enville for your grief. She pulled free. Robert let her go, fingers closing around air. His next words were barely breath. Then winter it is. On the King's Road northward, the first snowflakes drifted, though it was only mid-autumn. Scouts brought word that the gold cloaks marched behind them, and that Lord Tywin Lannister had finally declared for King Robert, though some swore the lion's grin hid iron chains of doubt. At Moat Cailin, Lyanna found banners massed. Karstark white suns, Mormont black bears, Reed bronze armor, Manderley mermen. The north had answered. Yet beyond the great causeway she glimpsed campfires bearing trout of the Tullus and the sunburst of House Baratheon. Riverrun had chosen Robert. Edmure's recent infatuation with the king's good cheer had turned to outright fealty. Maester Luwin's ravens spoke of tension in the Vale. Jon Arryn remained hand yet quietly counseled peace. Stannis brooded on Dragonstone with half the royal fleet. Renly charmed small folk in the Reach while Mace Tyrell weighed flowers against snow. Everywhere the realm inhaled, waiting to see whose truth would breathe next. Ned met her atop the crumbling battlements of the Moat. His gray eyes held pride, fear, love, and something like apology. You have set fire to every shorty the realm held. Lyanna drew her cloak tighter against the cold. Better fire than rot. He nodded, somber. Then let us blaze bright enough to forge something worthy from the embers. Beyond the neck the storms gathered, banners snapping, steel flashing like lightning yet unshed. Lyanna Stark, once a girl who loved gallant tales, now ready to write her own. One that might drown the songs of old kings and raise her son's name in their stead. The wind off the far snowfields carried a new scent now. Not ghost grass and salt, but pine and promise, sharp as a sword newly drawn. And in Winterfell's Godswood, under the silent heart tree, a child cooed at falling snow, unknowing that men called him prince, usurper, hope, and doom, all at once, and that the next breath of the realm waited upon the opening of his tiny fist. Cold moonlight silvered the battlements of Moat Cailin, and in its glow the banners of the north rippled like restless ghosts. Lyanna Stark paced the length of the ruined curtain wall, cloak snapping about her boots, eyes fixed upon the narrow ribbon of the causeway vanishing south into nighttime fog. She had stood watch here each dusk for 10 days, listening to wind and water and the distant murmur of thousands of men at arms. Tonight the silence felt heavier, pregnant with change, and her pulse beat hard beneath the wolf embroidered on her breast. Behind her the low clang of mail announced Ned's approach. He wore no helm, only a mantle of dark fur, but the new streaks of white at his temples made him seem more armored than steel could. He stopped at her side without greeting. The air between them was long past ceremony. Riverrun's raven arrived, he said after a moment. Edmure rides with 200 lances. He means to escort Robert's envoys north. Lyanna's jaw tightened. A gift-wrapped dagger.
Ned exhaled fog.
Or the last gallant gesture of a friend who does not yet grasp the board beneath his feet. The boy has a good heart, even when it misguides him. The realm is paved with good hearts. She rested gloved fingers on cold stone. And buried beneath them, Ned turned to face her fully. If we hold the neck, Robert cannot pass. Winter will come long before he finds another road. Stand here and the war is won before the first clash of steel. That would starve the south, she answered softly. Entire fields lie fallow after the fighting. Close the neck and the Greenlands go hungry. Robert will lash out like a wounded boar. Innocence will pay. And if we yield? Ned asked, voice low. We march, meet him upon the trident again, and bleed the realm twice over. Lyanna looked across the encampment where the Karstark's fires burned blue-bright beside the reeds' low peat glow. Beyond them thousands more shivered, muttered, waited. "There is a river between surrender and slaughter," she said. "We must find the ford." She pivoted, cloak swirling, and strode toward the broad stair descending the wall. Ned followed. In the yard below, Ser Jorah Mormont drilled raw recruits, barking cadence. Lady Meej stood watch with a bruised apple in hand, biting each time a shield slammed out of rhythm. Near the smithy, gentle Benjen Stark knelt by a heap of broken mail, teaching a boy whose downy beard still showed patches of skin how to mend a rivet. Their breath curled white. Winter pressed at every edge of the world. The council convened in a chamber once built to house green marsh generals of bygone ages. Its mossy flagstones were slick beneath furs and boots, but braziers burned bright, and the walls wept less water since Manderley masons set new mortar. Around a scarred oak table sat North and Neck, River and Hill, Ned, Howland Reed, gray-eyed and reed-thin, Lord Wyman Manderley, whose bulk dwarfed his chair, Lady Meej Mormont in her bearskin, Sir Helman Tallheart, grizzled and stirring a steaming mug, and Theon Wool, cheeks flushed from drink and passion both. Lyanna stood rather than sit, palms flat on the table's rim. "Robert's envoys will reach Moat Cailin within 7 days," she began. "Edmure regards this as parley. Robert regards it as ultimatum. We must decide what words will cross our walls to greet them." "Our words should be few," growled Wool. "Turn back or drown in bog." Manderley dabbed sweat from his brow despite the chill. "A bold sentiment, Lord Theon, but boldness is cheaper than bread. White Harbor's last harvest was meager. Another war is already upon us, whether we swing a sword or no," interrupted Meej, apple core in hand, eyes bright. "Robert has moved half the Stormlands to Riverrun, and scouts whisper of Tyrell banners unfurling. The Lion of Casterly Rock has taken the field, though none know for whom. Doubt never sat well on Tywin Lannister's shoulders. He will seize advantage soon." Ned rubbed the bridge of his nose. "We gambled upon Riverrun as neutral ground and lost, with Tully spears guiding Baratheon diplomats. Any talk of peace is pre-weighted." "Our strength is winter," Reed said quietly. "The longer Robert delays, the deeper the snows. If he marches, he must do so before the first heavy fall or risk his men encased in slush and famine. Yet if he rides too soon, supply trains will fail behind him. Either path weakens him." Lyanna considered this. "So we speak enough peace to keep his envoys talking, but not enough to convince Robert to tarry content. We feed doubt into his council, show him the cost of forcing a war. Perhaps." A knocking sounded. The door cracked open and Maester Luwin slipped in, parchment in hand. "Forgive the intrusion." A raven from the Eyrie. All eyes fixed upon him. Luwin handed the missive to Ned, who broke the seal. His brows knit as he read, then smoothed. "Jon Arryn resigns the hand's chain," he announced. "He sails for Dragonstone under pretext of health. Stannis calls banners to guard the hand's retreat." "How Robert will roar at that," muttered Wyman. Reed's thin lips curved. "With Jon Arryn gone, whose whisper reaches the king's ear?" Lyanna's mind worked. Varys the Spider, no doubt. Ser Barristan remains an honorable anchor, but his counsel is easily overridden. If Stannis shelters the former hand, then half the fleet sits beyond Robert's immediate call. A split harbor, a tired court. She looked down at her splayed fingers. The board shifts itself. Ned tapped the parchment. "Arryn begs we hold back from open war another moon. Says storms brew inside King's Landing that may yet burst without northern thunder." Lady Meej grunted. "A crabbed old lord's hope that court storms may drench courtiers, but armies drown small folk." Reed lifted a hand. "Yet small folk already drown in words never spoken true. Let the court tastes its own blighted wine while we sow seed for next spring." Lyanna straightened. "So be it. We delay swords, sharpen quills. When Robert's men arrive, they will bear home a riddle. Bend, bleed, or break." 5 days later, the first outriders appeared. Tully trout on river blue fields, surmounted by a crowned stag in gold thread. Lyanna watched them from atop the gatehouse as they splashed across the causeway's final span. Horses mud-caked, cloaks stiff with frost. Beside her Ned's knuckles whitened on the hilt of ice. He would not unsheath it save as last resort, but the weight of Valyrian steel was a comfort older than kings. The envoys totaled 50 men. Ser Brynden Tully himself at their head, bow across his back. Lord John Connington riding close, pink scar across a shaven scalp. Septon Myrmidon reciting soft prayers beneath his breath, and a young squire bearing a gilded scroll case. They halted before the mossy stones, banners drooping in windless air. Lyanna stepped forward. "Ser Brynden," she called, voice carrying, "we welcome you to northern soil. Dismount and share our meat. You and 4 may enter under guest right." The Blackfish removed his helm. Silver hair spilled like shadow over keen eyes. "I thank you, Lady Stark," he gestured, and 5 riders only approached. The rest remained without. Guest right would bind them, but not their hostages. Inside the hall they warmed by great hearths blazing birch and pine. Steaming beef and turnips, crusty bread, honeyed mead flowed. Yet for all the spread, words were icicles. Ser Brynden eased first. "I come in peace," he said, hands palm up. "My king bids me offer terms favorable." Lyanna sipped mead. "Speak them." Connington unbuckled the scroll case, produced parchment. "King Robert offers full pardon to House Stark and its vassals, recognition of northern autonomy, save royal tax, and invests Lyanna Stark under title of Lady Protector of the North. The child, John, is to be removed to King's Landing as ward, raised alongside Prince Mace's grandson in the faith. Upon majority, he may choose the Night's Watch or service at court." Silence fell like snow. Every northerner in the hall stiffened. Lyanna's grip tightened on her cup till it creaked. Ned's voice cut low. "A gilded cage is still a cage." Connington's gaze was steady. "A cage perhaps, but jewel-adorned and safe. Better a caged dragon than a burned realm." Lyanna rose. "My son is no dragon. He is a child of ice and fire, steel and snow, born to no master." She stepped round the table slowly, every eye following. "Tell Robert, I am protector already of truth against fear. Let him show equal courage. Meet me at Storm's End in single combat. Hammer against blade. Winner stakes the crown." Gasps murmured. Even Meage's brow shot up. The Blackfish's lips twitched. Connington frowned. "The king will not trade realm's fate on duel's whim. Then he wagers it upon armies," Lyanna answered. "And armies bleed mothers and sons rather than kings and queens." Brynden Tully leaned forward. "Lady Lyanna, might we speak in private?" She inclined her head. They crossed the hall to a curtained alcove scented of pine. There the Blackfish fixed her with eyes still bright from youth's embers. "My nephew is young, impetuous, desperate to prove loyalty. But he loves you as he loved Ned's sister before war." He glanced toward Ned across hall. "Bring him to our side, and the Riverlands may sway the realm's heart." Lyanna's shoulders eased. "I would sway hearts without spilling their blood, Ser Brynden. Yet Robert sees treason in every cradle." "I know," he sighed, "but there are other hearts." Lord Tyrell's ear bends to any tale of beneficence, of trade. Lady Olenna sniffs opportunity in fractured courts. And Tywin, 7 save us. Tywin tests whichever wind smells richest. Then we send ravens south with songs of peace, not war. She placed a hand on his forearm. "Will you carry such melody?" The Blackfish's laugh was soft. "I shall carry what you give, my lady. Whether my king listens, that is another tide." They returned. Connington's brows arched at the hush between them but said naught. Lyanna sat, drank, then nodded. "You have our answer. We will not yield the child. We will not bend knee. But neither do we thirst for war's ruin. Tell Robert we grant him time, 1 moon's turn, to consider duel, council, or covenant. After that, the neck closes for winter." Brynden and Connington exchanged glances. Septon Myrmidon murmured a brief prayer, perhaps for lost opportunities. At length Brynden said, "We will convey your words." Guess bread was broken, salt shared. The envoys departed at dawn. Lyanna stood upon the gatehouse again and watched them fade south into mist. Snowflakes drifted. Each flake that kissed her sleeve felt like a hearth ember. Small, bright, dangerous in enough number. South of the neck, realms moved. In King's Landing, Robert Baratheon raged through council chamber, wine cup spinning from wall to floor. Pycelle crouched to collect shards. Renly shifted uneasily. Varys watched with mild awe. "She dares demand single combat," Robert thundered. "I shattered Rhaegar with one swing. Does she think me hindered by skirt and swaddling?" Littlefinger's smile gleamed. "Bold challenge, your grace. Accept, and the realm praises your courage. Refuse, the realm whispers of fear." Robert glared. "She hides behind northern snow. Duel on Storm's End soil, pa. Storm's End commands hearts of your bannermen," Varys offered. "Win there, and no lord dare question your legitimacy." Renly spoke quiet, almost to himself. "And if you lose, brother?" Robert whirled, but voice faltered on reply. Stannis, newly arrived from Dragonstone, stepped into council. "We best speak of ensuring that cannot happen. Train, brother. Temper. The northern girl fights with the ferocity of wolves. Ask any yard hand who watched her tilt as child." He looked about. "Better yet, agree then stall. A moon's delay to bleed her host with supply cost. She cannot long feed men at Moat Cailin." Littlefinger nodded. "A feast for ravens, indeed. Hunger is cheapest assassin." Robert's shoulders rose and fell like bellows. At last he grinned, wolfishly. "Very well, I accept, but on neutral field. Harrenhal, I say, let the dragon's ruin witness our justice." "Send riders swift," Varys said, "and let the realm hear only your acceptance, not your doubts." As ravens leapt from red keep towers, Stannis lingered by a high-shuttered window, gaze drawn northward. Beneath his mailed hand lay a letter from Jon Arryn speaking of bastard babes in black cells, of secrets beneath the capital's cobbles. Stannis wondered which secret would burn first, the child beneath Winterfell's heart tree, or the one beneath King's Landing itself. In the Reach, Queen of Thorns Olenna Tyrell received the news while pruning purple roses. She snipped a bloom, sniffed, and hummed. "Boy King swings hammer again," she mused. "Girl wolf snaps back. Swords clang, roses wilt." She eyed her grandson, Lord Mace, puffing behind. "We shall water whichever garden grows tallest, dear." At Highgarden's harbor, merchant ships from Old Town carried talk that maesters debated prophetic comet shards glimpsed in dusk. Red priests preached of Azor Ahai risen in far north. Faith militants stirred in secret cells. All threads wove into one tapestry, the realm's breath held between two fates. Back in the neck, Lyanna knelt in the godswood of Moat Cailin, where mangrove roots tangled with iced loam. Snow dappled her hair. She pressed dagger tip to palm and let 7 drops of blood fall on dark water. "Old gods," she whispered, "and new, and those yet to be forged in smoke, let this realm taste truth over comfort." Behind her, Howland Reed's daughter Mira stood guard, trident spear glinting. When Lyanna rose, Mira spoke softly. "My father says the Crannog folk dream of a white hart running south, pursued by hounds yet never caught. He wonders if this is omen of child untouched by war." Lyanna smiled faint. "Tell Lord Reed his dreams lend me courage." She wiped blade, sheathed it. Courage and need for cunning. The moon turned. Snow deepened. Robert's reply arrived 2 days before the deadline, borne by Ser Barristan on a lathered courser. He knelt in Moat Cailin's yard before Lyanna, helm under arm. "His Grace accepts single combat," the knight announced. Harrenhal's outer ward, first day of the new year. Terms, arms of choice to yield or to death. Should Robert Baratheon fall, crown passes to Jon Stark. Should Lyanna Stark fall, her army disperses, child wards, war ends. Ned frowned. "And if either champion refuses terms mid-fight? By gods and men, they will not." Selmy answered, gaze unwavering. I stand witness. Lyanna stepped forward. I accept. Barristan straightened. Then I pledge my sword to escort you south and guard the boy's honor should tides turn ill. She clasped his arm. Your honor is shield enough. Preparations began at once. Steel was honed on whetstones until sparks bloomed. Blacksmith Donal Lake forged a light-handled longsword for Lyanna. Winterblue steel, fuller etched with weaving roses. Ned presented her a kite shield painted half direwolf, half trident of Martell, tribute to blood in her veins and son's heritage. She trained night and dawn with Ser Roderick, with Meege, with Yora, each style shaping edges of her stance. She drank goat's milk, ate haunches of venison, slept little. On the eve of departure, she visited the nursery chamber where Aegon John gurgled beneath furs. The infant's eyes, a startling shade between dusk and dawn, tracked her. She pressed a kiss to his brow. I ride for you, she whispered. If I die, remember the feel of winter's first snow upon skin. Remember the song of dawn birds. Remember that the realm is wide enough for love and truth both. Tears threatened. She swallowed them, left. Ned waited outside. Catelyn will keep him safe, he said. She loves fiercely. I know. Lyanna leaned against the corridor's rough stone. But every mother's heart fears dragons. She looked at her brother. Promise me, Ned, that if I fall, you continue the fight not with swords but with seats. Council seats, hearts, ink on parchment. War's ember may forge new order, but only words make it last. He drew her into embrace. I promise. At dawn 300 horse rode south. Stark, Mormont, Reed, Tallheart. Lyanna at their head on a dapple gray mare. Ned beside, Meege thunder beating behind. Snowflakes swirled like blessing or warning. They crossed the Trident where ice rims began to clutch slow waters. Villages watched in silent wonder. Some cheered the wolf and rose. Others hid behind shutters painted with 7-pointed stars. At Maidenpool, a tall knight in red lake armor greeted them. Ser Jaime Lannister, golden head bear, smile knife thin. I travel to Harrenhal as my father's eyes, he said. Mayhap we share the road? Ned's hand found Ice's grip. Lyanna's gaze measured him. Travel if you will, she replied. But no oath binds lion to wolf. My sister binds us all, some say, Jaime muttered, then spurred his horse to fall in behind. The column grew. Ser Davos Seaworth rode from Dragonstone bearing Stannis' silent blessing. Brienne of Tarth galloped from Sapphire Isle to offer sword to honor of single combat. Even a clutch of Dornish spears under Lady Enwam's sand joined, faces masked in silk against cold. Word had spread. The duel at Harrenhal would be more than trial by arms. It would weigh the spirit of the realm. Harrenhal's gargantuan towers loomed black against slate sky, melted stone frozen in grotesque shapes. On the first day of the New Year, thousands packed its shattered outer ward. Stormlords in stag helms, Northmen in bear and wolf skins, Reach knights gleaming in green enamel, Dornish spears craning from ramparts. Merchants hawked hot wine. Septons muttered prayers. Witches whispered prophecies born of ash and bone. The lists were marked by torch poles. 2 pavilions faced. One of gray and blue, draped with direwolf and crownless dragon. The other crimson and gold stag. Trumpets blared as Robert Baratheon emerged. Huge in ringmail, warhammer slung across broad back, helm capped with iron antlers. He raised the hammer and the crowd roared. Opposite, Lyanna strode forth, wearing half-plate of blackened steel trimmed in silver, her wolf rose shield shining. The crowd hushed at her slight form, then murmured in waves of wonder as she drew her sword. Winter blue, rose-etched, catching pale sunlight like water. She knelt briefly, touched blade to earth, then rose. Old Septon Maribald blessed ground. Ser Barristan took post as field judge, flanked by Brienne and Yora to ensure honor. Ravens circled overhead. Robert swung his hammer onto shoulder, grin flashing. One last dance, my love. Lyanna's face was calm. Not a dance, an accounting. Horns sounded. Combat began. He charged, hammer arcing. She sidestepped, shield braced, sword flicking to tap his gauntlet, testing. Hammer struck shield edge, wood splintered but held. She pivoted, slash at his thigh. Mail turned edge yet staggered him. Crowd gasped. Robert recovered, bellowed, hammered again and again, rhythm drumming. Lyanna backed, absorbing blows on shield and bracers, each strike ringing bone. Snowflakes swirled between them like sparks. On the third beat she ducked inward, blade sweeping for ribs. Robert twisted, hammer half blocked, but her elbow drove into his gut. He grunted, stumbled. Minutes stretched. Lyanna's breath puffed white. Robert's roared steam. Her sword traced arcs of moonlit water. His hammer boomed thunder. Sparks flew where metal kissed. Neither yielded. In the 15th pass, Robert's hammer caught shield center. Would burst, rim flying. Lyanna tumbled, rolled beneath next blow, came to knee, parried downward strike that shook her forearm numb. She sprang aside just as hammer cratered earth where head had been. Cheers, shrieks. Barristan's brows knotted, yet he held rules. Lyanna circled, shield fragments discarded. She switched sword to left hand briefly, flexed right fingers. Blood-dotted gauntlet. Across yard Robert heaved, sweat dousing beard, eyes wild. Yield, he panted. Be my queen still. You mistake hunger for love, she answered, stance coiling. And throne for cure. She dashed forward, faint high then low. Robert's hammer rose too late. Her blade sliced greave strap, metal plate slid, exposed knee. Next swipe cut flesh, he roared. Knee buckled, but enormous strength kept him upright. He swung in fury. Hammer whooshed. Lyanna dove, rolling across churned ground. She came up behind him, slashed across back of hauberk where rings gapped. Crimson spurted. He staggered, pivoted with desperation backhand that caught edge of her pauldron. Tore leather, sent her spinning. Momentum threw him off balance. He collapsed to one knee, wounded leg buckling fully now. Silence rippled across crowd. Lyanna rose, hair loose, sword poised at chest height. Robert struggled to stand, warhammer braced like crutch. Breath rasping, he glared through sweat. Is this how it ends? For a boy's folly, it ends, Lyanna said. When truth is king. She advanced, point steady. Robert's eyes flicked to barristers, to audience. Renly, Stannis, Tywin in reserved box, and to memory of blue roses long dead. Slowly, aching, grinding, he lowered hammer head, let its maul bite dirt. I yield, he said. Shock deafened the ward. Barristan stepped forward. Robert Baratheon yields. The crown passes to Jon Stark Targaryen, son of Lyanna Stark and Prince Rhaegar, under regency of his mother until his majority. Some cheered, some hissed. Steel rasped as half a dozen stormlords half-drew swords. Tywin's brows rose like twin citadels. Renly looked stunned. Stannis's jaw clenched. Olenna Tyrell chuckled. Lyanna exhaled. She lowered sword, but did not sheath it. Let witness stand, she declared loudly, that Robert Baratheon showed a true king's courage to yield for realm's sake. She turned to him, offered gloved hand. Rise, Lord Protector. Robert stared at hand as though at adders. Slowly he seized it. She helped him stand. Pain twisted his features, but beneath pain flickered relief, perhaps gratitude. Criers repeated verdict across walls. Ravens launched to every corner. Yet no battle ended simply. From Tywin's box, a Lannister crossbowman raised hidden weapon. Shaft loosed, aimed at Lyanna's back. Jaime leapt from crowd, blade flashing, severed bolt midair. Shards clattered harmless. Pandemonium erupted. Northmen roared, stormlords surged, Dornish spears brandished. Lyanna raised voice clear as horn. Hold! Any man draws blood this day defies gods and judgment. She strode to Tywin's box, eyes blazing. Lannister, call your cur. Tywin's face smoothed to marble. He gestured. The would-be assassin was dragged forth, golden lions on cloak. A zealot, it seems, Tywin said blandly. My regrets. Jaime tossed broken bolt at his father's feet. Regret stains crimson. With tension crackling, Stannis waited to stage. The duel is won. The realm demands order. He looked to Robert, then Lyanna. I will hold the crown in trust until the prince is brought under Sep's blessing. Ships await to escort him from Winterfell. Lyanna shook head. The boy will stay north until next spring. Winter's chill would kill him in southern climes. Stannis's lips thinned, but Robert nodded. Let it be so. I will return to Storm's End, rule as protector. Stannis, you shall act hand. Tywin's mouth twitched. Renly exhaled. Barristan Selmy knelt, offered white book. Your grace, he said to Lyanna. Command. She laid hand on his shoulder. Rise, Ser Barristan. Your honor guides us forward. A hush fell as she turned, raised sword high. Snowflakes drifted onto blade, melting into shining beads. Today the realm chooses truth, she said. Not north against south, wolf against stag, but all houses against the lies that poison root to leaf. Let winter cleanse us, and spring plant anew. I swear to guard the crown, not wield it, until my son is grown. In that time I will call councils of lords and small folk both, to forge laws that bind kings as tightly as peasants. No child shall fear royal wrath. No lord shall serve fear's crown. Some shouted approval, some uncertainty, but none turned away. History breathed. Robert leaned on hammer, gaze on her. I once promised you blue roses, he said hoarsely. I see now they were only petals over thorns. But perhaps Stark snow will bloom red when warmth returns. Lyanna met his eyes. Let us plant them together. Night cloaked Harrenhal when Lyanna finally collapsed onto camp cot, muscles trembling. Ned entered, brow furrowed with 1,000 unspoken fears. She tried to smile, but tears spilled. He gathered her into embrace. It is only beginning, she murmured. A beginning is more than many ever know, he whispered back. Outside, torches burned along ramparts where Northerner and Stormlander alike shared flasks, marveled, argued, dreamed. In sky above, a ragged red comet flared. Some would later recall seeing it first that night, burning bright across frozen void, bleeding light onto stone and flesh. Seers would claim omen of dragon's return, of change in blood and fire. But for Lyanna Stark, it was simply another truth written across dark, undeniable as her heartbeat. She slept, and in dreams walked the snows of Winterfell beside a boy whose eyes held dawn. She showed him swords turned to plowshares, towers rebuilt, ghosts forgiven. And though winter wind howled, it carried the scent of blooming roses. The ring of steel still lingered in Harrenhal's night air long after torches guttered low and crowds dispersed to ale-sodden cots. In a makeshift infirmary beneath a scorched arch, Maester Qyburn stitched Robert Baratheon's torn knee while the surrendered king cursed in half-slurred prayers to every god he had ever mocked. Lyanna stood in the doorway, arms folded across her breastplate, waiting until the last knot was tied. When Qyburn finished and slipped away like a gray rat, she stepped inside. The room stank of boiled wine and sweat. Robert's eyes lifted, bright with pain and an ale edge of shame. Well, wolf, he rasped. Do you come to gloat? Gloating wastes breath, she answered. She poured water from a cracked jug, handed him the cup. Drink. Tomorrow you ride. He snorted but swallowed greedily. Your mercy pricks worse than blade. I dreamed of crowns and kisses, woke to stitches and surrender. You woke alive, she said. Stop mourning your pride and learn its lesson. Robert leaned his head back against stone, exhaling. Lesson? That stubborn girls grow into iron queens. That kingship is service, she replied, and the house that serves alone falls alone. The thought seemed to sting more sharply than his leg. He turned his face to torch shadow. Lyanna left, closing the door gently behind. Down the corridor she saw Ned speaking with Ser Barristan. Both glanced her way, relief flickering through fatigue. The castle lay sleepless beneath them, a patchwork of small fires and whispered reckonings. Somewhere outside, the red comet burned over the lakes, its fire mirrored in shattered water where Harrenhal's towers slumped like melted candles. At dawn, Robert's party limped back toward King's Landing. Selmy rode at his side, swore the Kingsguard would enforce the new order. Stannis remained behind with ink-blotted charters, already drafting proclamations for a regency he had not sought but would shape with iron quill. The Blackfish escorted Lyanna's host north as far as the Trident, promising Riverlander grain once spring thawed the fields. Jaime Lannister vanished, whether chasing crossbowmen or conscience no one knew. Snow fell heavier with every mile toward the neck. The world felt hushed, listening. In the Pass of the Twins, Lord Walder hosted the regent and her brother in high timbers draped with fry blue. He muttered thin congratulations and requested betrothal contracts for half a dozen granddaughters. Lyanna thanked him, promised nothing, rode on. In whitewashed in yards, small folk knelt beside the road to glimpse the woman who had made a king yield. Some cheered, some crossed themselves, some wept for reasons they could not name. One crone pushed through guards to press a bundle of dried, rose hips into Lyanna's gauntlet. "For the babe," she croaked. "Sweet his breath." Lyanna tucked the offering inside her cloak and rode on in silence, heart heavy and strange. They reached Winterfell on the 5th day of the new moon. Smoke curled from every chimney, and the great courtyard teemed with banners and beasts and bagpipers who struck up the old Stark marching air as soon as her mare's hooves clattered over the drawbridge. Catelyn descended the steps with Robb gripping her skirts and 2-year-old Sansa toddling after. Both children stared round-eyed at the swirling guards, at the dire wolves loping ahead. Grey Wind had grown tall as the boy whose name he shared. Catelyn's face held cautious gladness. In her arms she bore the infant prince, wrapped in quilted swaddling of direwolf gray and dragon red. Lyanna dismounted, peeled away gauntlets, and reached for her son. Tiny fingers curled around one of hers, warm as dawn. His eyes, a stormy blue-purple that seemed to shift with torchlight, blinked up at her. She pressed her lips to his brow and inhaled the scent of mother's milk and winter air. Ned stood beside, laying a gentle hand on both their shoulders, and the courtyard erupted in cheers. Lyanna raised the child aloft. Snowflakes swirled round them like benediction. That night the great hall blazed brighter than any feast since the war's first trumpet. Yet for all the ale and boar and ballads, tension flitted like bats through rafters. Lyanna had no illusions. Victory upon Harrenhal's field had been single combat, not the ending of swords. Robert's lords would measure concessions and grievance. Tywin Lannister brewed silent storm. The Tyrells scented an open garden of alliances. Even Stannis, loyal to law before blood, would parse every parchment for cracks. Before the tables were cleared, Lyanna rose, babe in arms, and silence rippled outward. She spoke little, thanked her bannermen, praised healers, promised winter stores for every village. She told them the boy would be anointed at the Heart Tree come sunrise and granted the Stark name as well as Targaryen, that no child should be torn from mother for political ransom. "He will learn to wield sword and quill," she said, "and heed the small folks' counsel as keenly as the maesters." Then she pledged that within a year she would call a council of all 7 kingdoms at Winterfell to draft a charter binding highborn justice and smallfolk rights alike, or perish in the attempt. Some stared in wonder. Some whispered treason to unseat nobles. But most, remembering the sight of Robert's lowered hammer, tapped cups to tables and murmured assent. At dawn, they gathered in the Godswood where hot springs steamed beneath snow-loaded branches. The weirwood's red eyes watched as Ned drew a knife of splinter-black dragonglass and pricked the babe's heel just enough for 3 drops to fall upon roots. Lyanna whispered the old words, asking the nameless gods to guard a child born of love, shielded by truth. Beside her Benjen cradled white pup Ghost, and the direwolf pup licked up one crimson droplet before howling a note that chilled every spine. Maester Luwin then anointed forehead with fragrant oil of pine and myrrh, naming him Jon Aegon Stark Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone and heir of Winterfell. Lyanna's tears froze on lashes as she lifted him. In that instant, comet light streaked faint across bleached morning sky, and some swore the snowpack reflected crimson flame. The weeks that followed were an avalanche of parchment. Stannis's ravens arrived daily, sealed with crowned fiery heart of the lordship he had taken at Dragonstone. Each scroll bore drafts, accords of regency, taxation reforms, oaths from Crownland's lords. Stannis demanded that Tywin reaffirm fealty within a fortnight. No answer came from Casterly Rock, only rumors of levies drilled in the valleys beneath the Golden Keep. From Highgarden came flowery missives praising the boy prince's lineage, hinting at future marriage with the blossoming Marjorie. From Dorne, Prince Dor sent a letter so measured and polite it caused Reed to chuckle. Buried beneath layers of courtesy was a simple line: "Justice remains our spear, yet spears may wait if truth sits safely upon throne." But from the Ironborn came louder noise than words. Balon Greyjoy announced that islands which paid no fealty to dragons would pay none to wolves. Reavers began harrying western coasts, seizing Lannister prize ships and Tyrell winecogs alike. Tywin's rage traveled north on every vine. "Let your wolf queen protect my harbors if she means to wear crown," he wrote, sealing the letter with wax stamped hard enough to crack table wood. Winterfell's war council spread maps across the solar. Reed traced marsh channels with reed pen. Manderley measured sea routes. Meage Mormont voted to sail a bareheaded fleet this very dawn. Yet Lyanna cautioned restraint. "A queen who seizes first sword she sees ends with naught but hilts," she said. "We must forge alliances sturdy as iron before we brave salt storms." So ravens flew yet again. One to Pike, offering Balon Greyjoy a seat upon new council in return for peace and pledge. One to Dragonstone, begging Stannis to keep fleet alert against Iron Raiders. One to Highgarden, proposing mutual patrols. One to Casterly Rock, inviting Tywin to Winterfell to witness law written by hand, not by hammer. Ned considered that last risk great, but Lyanna insisted. A lion in shadows hunts. In torchlight he calculates. Tywin's answer arrived 2 weeks later, carried by Ser Kevin. The letter crackled with frost. The lion accepted invitation, but under guarantee of safe passage, hostages exchanged, and duel no longer binding his sovereignty. "The rule of combat," he wrote, "is not law but spectacle, and Casterly Rock bends knee to neither." Tucked behind parchment was a gift. A single golden rose, stem sharpened to needle point. Maester Luwin hissed. Ned cursed. Lyanna slid finger along its petal and pondered the language of threats spoken through flowers. Word from King's Landing soon spilled over the neck like thaw water. Robert had returned to Red Keep on litter, half the city lining streets to glimpse broken giant. Some jeered hammerless king, others cast rose petals before him. In council chambers, Renly flitted between great lords, smoothing bruised egos. Varys sowed rumor of bastard princes. Littlefinger spun coins into promises. The faith militant, emboldened by talk of mortal duel for divine right, began preaching that gods themselves had chosen the babe, though which gods depended upon coin. One dusk a shadow slipped through Winterfell's outer wall, caught only because gray wind's low growl drew guard's lantern. The man wore scale of burnished red and carried a twisted string crossbow, identical to Harrenhal's assassin. Under torch interrogation he revealed little, only a repeated phrase: "A child of dragons is a fire the lion must quench." Before further questions he bit a hidden poison seed. His death rattled louder than confession. Word raced to Lyanna. She stood long above the corpse, face unreadable. Then she ordered 3 things: double sentries, hidden tunnels collapsed, and a raven flown south bearing only 5 words: "Your flower drew blood again." While spies crept, life inside Winterfell unfurled in slower joys. Robb discovered training yard and refused to leave. Sansa began singing lullabies to baby Prince, convinced him half-brother despite whatever grown-ups whispered. Catelyn and Lyanna walked ramparts after dusk, trading stories of Brandon's pranks, of Jon Arryn's patience, of fear. One night Cat confessed worry that northern lords would resent a Targaryen heir foremost over Stark blood. Lyanna squeezed her hand. "Then we teach them lineage need not divide loyalties. Wheat grows deep in soil shared by many seeds." Spring equinox neared, though snow still lay thick. That morning Benjen galloped through gate with 2 black-cloaked brothers, faces wind-burned. In hall he reported white shadows seen beyond the wall. Dead men walking, eyes pale as milk. Most lords muttered ghost tales, but Lyanna listened. "If death itself wakes," she said. The realm's quarrels become children's squabbles. She resolved to send grain, copper, spears north to Castle Black, and to hold council there come summer. Ned approved, though worry shaded his eyes. News of looming winter horrors reached King's Landing through Varys's whisper web, and for once even Littlefinger failed to joke. Robert summoned priests of the Red Temple, demanded they speak of prophecy. They gave him riddles of ice and fire. He drained another flagon, wishing the world simpler. A beast to smash, a war to win. Yet the realm he had seized now writhed with perils no hammer could flatten. Highgarden seized chance. Lady Olenna traveled to King's Landing with granddaughter Marjorie, her arrival a mask of perfume and politics. Over feasts she suggested union. Jon Stark Targaryen betrothed to Marjorie when both came of age, binding Reach grain to North's snow. Renly championed the notion, charmed by Marjorie's soft smile and softer ambition. Stannis scowled but could not deny the harvest calculus. Word carried swiftly to Winterfell, where Tywin Lannister had just arrived under white banner of Parley, flanked by 300 crimson cloaks. Tywin's entrance to the great hall stilled music. Lamps flickered on his polished gold breastplate, but the man beneath shone colder than steel. He bowed perfunctorily to Lyanna, eyes never leaving hers. "I come in peace, your grace," he said, voice as dry as dusty ledgers. "Let us discuss the price." She met him atop dais beside Ned, babe asleep in cradle carved of weirwood. Tywin's gaze darted to the child only once, unreadable. For hours they haggled. Tywin would accept the duel's outcome if treasury debts owed by crownlands could be spread across realm. If Prince Jon wed a Lannister cousin in event Marjorie match failed. If northern fur tariffs lowered. Lyanna offered council seats, reforms easing small folk levies, promised that Ironborn raids on Lannister coastline would be addressed. Each concession stung one side, heartened another. By candle's guttering end they drafted tentative pact. Lannister swords would defend coastlines against Ironborn in exchange for port rights at White Harbor. In return, Stark ships would ferry grain to Lannisport should Reach harvests falter. Little and large threads weaving. Yet Tywin departed the next day, leaving behind a sealed chest. Inside lay 3 golden roses cast in solid gold. Luwin frowned at omen. Lyanna understood. 1 for each arrow yet unloosed. She stored them beneath crypt, next to Brandon's dust, silent vow. No sooner had Lion left than Raven arrived from Pike. Balon Greyjoy rejected council seat, declared himself king of the Isles and the North Channel, sent severed hand of a Lannister captain as proof. Tywin's fleet, still coasting home, clashed with Ironborn longships off Fair Isle. Blood-slaked waves. War again sniffed daylight. The Regency Council assembled in Winterfell Solar expanded to bursting. Stannis rode north to oversee defense at Seaguard. Manderley recalled every deep draft cog. Meege volunteered Bear Islanders to man newly forged longboats. Lyanna dispatched Yora east along King Road with 100 light riders to harass Reaver forays inland. Ned suggested appealing to Harlaw and Blacktide clans who loathed Balon's pride. Lyanna sent ravens offering coin and autonomy if they betrayed Pike. Through it all, Baby Jon squealed, toothless grin bright, oblivious. On a storm-torn evening, Varys arrived unexpected. Snow swirled round his purple coach as he bowed low before Regent, explaining spiders never sleep. Inside Lyanna's solar he laid out whisper threads. Karth merchants seeking spice routes through narrow sea would fund Crown if given harbor rights. Faceless men rumored to accept contracts on Greyjoy officers. In Essos, young girl with silver hair sailed with Sel's words, Daenerys, last dragon's daughter, maybe claim rival. Lyanna listened, thanked him, but warned, truth is coin, eunuch, but counterfeit gleams same as gold. Varys smiled, bowed again, vanished into flurry. That winter the white knife froze solid enough for wagons. Manderley deployed carpenters to hack ice into defensive ramparts, should Ironborn attempt upriver raid. Tales of dead men walking filtered south in stuttering tongues. Small folk began lighting green candles beneath windows each night, old custom toward spirits. Maester Luwin scoured crumbling tomes. Reed's daughter Jojen sent dreams of blue shadows creeping through snow caves. On one crisp dawn, Benjen Stark departed again for the Wall with 20 seasoned rangers, promising ravens twice weekly. Lyanna stood on battlements watching his company vanish like charcoal lines against endless white and felt sudden hollowness in chest. Political winds shifted daily. In King's Landing, Robert found solace in organizing tournaments for orphans of war, though coin scarce. Renly courted Tyrell gold. Stannis grew prickly under both their eyes. Faith militant, sensing vacuum, lobbied to crown the boy prince under September blessing now, not later. For every letter arriving at Winterfell pleading haste, another warned of uprising if South must travel to far north for counsel. Lyanna weighed possibilities. Hold summer assembly at Moat instead? But roads, provisions, host accommodations, nothing simple. Midwinter festival arrived, and with it a caravan from Dorne. Prince Oberyn in saffron cloak, 8 daughters by different mothers, each armed, and a closed palanquin said to contain Prince Doran's written terms and, rumor whispered, one of Elaya's jewels as token. Oberyn stepped onto Winterfell's yard, sniffed cold, and laughed. "Snow tastes of old debts," he pronounced. At feast that night he toasted Lyanna's audacity, Robert's bruised pride, Tywin's hidden shame, and his own vow to see justice served in courtroom or pit. Lyanna noted the flicker in his dark eyes when he beheld baby Jon. "He has Elaya's spirit," Oberyn said softly, "bright and hard to smother. Guard him well." With Dornish spears pledged, the Regency's web stretched across map. Yet still Ironborn raids gnawed coasts, still Tywin's roses pricked, still Comet's tail burned ominous across sky. In lands beyond Qohor, Selsword captain named Bittersteel wrote letters offering dragon banners for coin. In Bravos, an Iron Bank ledger recorded royal arrears and ticked steadily. One brittle night, assassin struck again, this time inside Winterfell's inner bailey. He breached a postern unlocked for stable smoke venting, slew 2 guards with narrow-bladed dirk, then crept toward Tower Nursery. But a direwolf senses sleep not. Ghost's low snarl alerted Catelyn, who screamed. The man fled, dragging bleeding arm. Benjen's eldest ranger daughter loosed arrow from gallery, pinning him to W.L. Crank. Under torchlight he proved no Lannister nor Selsword but a silent brother from Citadel's Dark Order, the Quill Shadows, loyal to ancient doctrine that forbade Targaryen return. He carried small scroll reading, "Fire and Wolf Breed Apocalypse." Under torture he confessed Tyrell Purse, though truth remained uncertain. He died convulsing on Maester's herbs. Lyanna convened midnight council. Tension fractured floorboards. Mead shouted for blood. Reed counseled patience. Oberyn offered to send sand snakes into Highgarden Gardens to pluck flowers at root. Lyanna raised hand. "Violence sprouts violence. We answer not with shadow knives but daylight vows." She announced open investigation led by Barristan, 1 Stormlander commander, 1 Tyrell sworn shield, to expose plot and shame culprits before realm's eyes. For now, Marjorie's match would be shelved. Raven flew south bearing polite regret. Highgarden's reply arrived swift, velvet-wrapped. A cordial denial of wrongdoing, accompanied by cask of arbor gold and bushel of golden roses. Fresh, thornless. Lady Olenna's note read, "A queen must prune vigorously." Lyanna sipped wine, pondered how thorns vanish yet roots remain. As snows began to crust in February's biting wind, Benjen's raven arrived late and ragged, script shaken. His patrol had sighted white figures near the fist of the first men, lost 3 men to cold blue blades that did not melt in fire. He sought aid, dragonglass, maybe dragons themselves. Maester Luwin paled. Lyanna summoned council. Dire news overshadowed Ironborn and lions alike. "If dead walk," she said. "They march for all." Manderly argued ships no use against snow demons. Oberyn demanded proof. Tywin's envoys scoffed. But Ned believed his brother. Lyanna decreed. 6 of the realm's maesters to gather lore. Reed's crannogmen to harvest black obsidian in Marsh Island mounds. Obsidian arrowheads forged at Moat Foundry. A sample chest sent north via Swift Courser. 2 nights later, Jon Arryn himself arrived at Winterfell, gaunt from illness but eyes alive. He knelt before Lyanna, something she would never have imagined when once he had promised her hand in marriage to Robert, and said, "I seek to serve once more if realm will have me." She lifted him, thanked him, named him High Chancellor of the Charter Council. Behind him stood Shireen Baratheon, cheeks flush with excitement, and Cresson, her maester, bringing parchments on dragonglass properties and histories of Long Night. In King's Landing, Littlefinger sensed power drifting north like magnetic stone. He whispered to Cersei, who had grown restless under Robert's droning regrets, that Lannister fortunes slipped if wolves rewrote law. Cersei's reply was a smile sharper than any sword. Soon after, a message reached Tywin. The Faith had accepted a crown tithe from Golden Company, rumored to fund a holy expedition north to tame heresy. Tywin's brows lowered. He dispatched Ser Jaime back to capital to watch sister, and half his treasury to buy silence where needed. Greyjoy campaigns escalated. Pike's longships burned Lannisport's outer docks, and same tide raided Bear Isle fisheries. Meage Mormont led fierce counterstroke, capturing Victarion's youngest nephew and chaining him beneath Hall. But each raid advanced Balon's legend. Ironborn thrived on dread. Lyanna realized piecemeal response failed. She began planning joint naval assault. Manderley Cogs, Lannisport galleys, Tyrell Drommons under Redwine Fleet, and even a loan of Stormlander warships Robert offered to cleanse shame. In secret chamber of Winterfell's armory, shipwright sketches unrolled across benches. Gnarled old fishers offered sea lore. Dwarfs hammered nails. Meanwhile, White Harbor held a strange cargo, a clutch of huge petrified eggs delivered by Pentoshi Magister seeking trade. Rumor whispered dragon eggs. Maesters doubted. Lyanna inspected. Stone cold, grayscale marbled with faint crimson. She stored them in crypt furnace, half hoping they would stir, half fearful they would. When Oberyn saw them, his eyes lit like war flame. "Fire answers ice," he murmured. "But which burns realm faster?" Months slid by beneath endless winter sky. Charter Council drafts piled. Lords grumbled at clauses limiting droit du seigneur, banning child soldiers, establishing peasant courts. But others praised roads for trade, fair tithes. Tyrell, Arryn, Manderley, Reed, Martell endorsed majority. Tywin withheld. Littlefinger lobbied inside King's Landing to ensure Charter would fail assembly. He bribed scribes to miscopy clauses, sowing confusion. Lyanna responded by inviting scribes of every sept to Winterfell, offering warm hearth and clear ink. Knowledge, she reckoned, was arrow Ironborn could not sink. Summer's first day, though snow still knee-high, saw birth of daughter to Catelyn. Arya, fierce-eyed babe already clenching tiny fists. Lyanna served as midwife, blade of dragonglass beneath pillow. When infant wailed, the wolves outside answered. Some said it was omen of twin queens yet unborn. Others said winter simply echoed birth's cry. Ned wept quietly. Lyanna held sister-in-law's hand until dawn. In Bravos, 10 Towers envoys negotiated loan with Iron Bank to fund Ironborn war. In Myr, Sellswords painted new banners. A red comet crossing White Field, said to be gift of faceless patron. Whispers of Daenerys Targaryen reached Dorne. She had married Sellsword captain and amassed 10,000 Dothraki who now eyed Westeros's wars. Lyanna read every scrap, heart tight. Her son's claim balanced on blade thinner than winter ice. The Great Charter Council finally convened mid-autumn of second year after duel. Lords and ladies traveled under banners of truce to Moat Cailin, safer than Wall, warmer than Winterfell. Tents spread across causeway like bright petals on gray water. Commoners lined roads selling pies, furs, songs of Wolf Rose Regent. Tywin arrived last, golden standard whipping in damp air, flanked by Jaime and a silent Cersei wearing hood deep enough to hide green eyes. Inside Mosswalled Hall, built newly for purpose, Jon Arryn read preamble. Rights of free men to not be slain without judgment. Limitation of royal levy to harvest yields. Abolishment of child ward hostages. Council of Realms to meet every 2 years to review law. Debates flared. Tyrell wanted clause ensuring trade privileges. Martell demanded reparations for Elia. Lannister argued against ceiling on interest. Ironborn envoys stormed out, declaring independence. Yet Lyanna guided talk like river pilot, steering round rocks, coaxing compromise with promises of grain, coastal forts, gold mines reopened under shared charters. 3 weeks in, charter stood near ratification when arrow of news struck. Castle Black's last raven. White walkers breached the wall at abandoned night fort. Undead host moving south. Panic cracked council. Tyrell envoys clamored to flee home. Lannisters questioned truth. Oberyn's spear thumped floor. Words mean nothing when dead swing swords. Lyanna seized dais, voice iron. Our quarrels end or all end. She proposed. Sign charter now. March united host north. Stand beneath one banner of ice and fire. She drew sword Winterrose, planted tip in moss. Who stands with life, place hand upon steel. First Ned, then Stannis, then Barristan. Dornish spears, reeds reed, Tallheart oak, Manderley whale, one by one touched blade. Marjorie Tyrell stepped forward, placed slender fingers. Her grandmother nodded. Jaime looked to Cersei. She hesitated, then shook head. Tywin stared long before striding forward and gripping hilt. His green eyes met Lyanna's gray. For realm, he said softly. Only Ironborn envoy refused and left. Charter sealed. Obsidian forges screamed day and night. Ravens flew to every holdfast. Muster. Sharpen. March. Robert left King's Landing, hammer renewed, traveling north at head of Stormlander levies. From Dragonstone, Melisandre carried glowing sword to Stannis. Some whispered Azor reborn. Daenerys landed at White Harbor with small retinue, offering dragons. Though her eggs remained stone, her words flamed. Lyanna stood on battlements of Moat Cailin, babe now toddling beside grey direwolf bigger than he. She gazed toward horizon where auroras writhed green and purple. Snowflakes drifted luminous. Ned joined her, clasping cloak round shoulders. Do you ever think of that day at Harrenhal? He asked. And wish you had let Robert bury his pride in steel? She smiled faint. If I had, we might still fight each other instead of what comes. Truth demanded cost. We paid. He nodded. Now realm demands more. Below, united banners lined causeway. Silver trout beside golden rose, sunspear beside roaring lion, crowned stag beside direwolf. Heft of years weighed heavy, but in her chest burned quiet certainty. She knelt, lifting son into arms. Look, John, she whispered, pointing to throng. Not north, not south, Westeros. Someday you will guard them all. The child giggled, reaching for snowflake drifting glowing in torchlight. It melted on his palm. He laughed again, eyes bright with unshadowed wonder. Lyanna held him close as wind rose, howling across marsh reeds like horns of ancient kings. Behind her, an army gathered for dawn march, the living arrayed against winter's deadness, bound by oath etched in sword and council seal, sparked by a woman who once danced in rain and now dared dance with storm and ice alike. In the distance, beyond frozen rivers and silent forests, the first pale wraith stepped onto crusted snow, blue eyes fixed southward, and felt the heartbeat of mankind quicken.